Before I get started, let me just take care of a little bit of house cleaning, if you will. Some of you might be wondering where my team-by-team previews are for the Philadelphia Eagles, and then I believe the NFC and AFC West divisions. I kind of just ran out of time to do them. I got sidetracked with other stuff. So the best I could say is not anything personal about your teams, not that I necessarily don't care. It just, I didn't get it done in time. And it seems kind of stupid to me to do a preview after there's already been a week of the season. Not that the preview would be really affected by what happened in week one. It's just for some of you, it might seem a bit odd. So what I'll do is I'll just put in the description box maybe my predictions for those teams. That'll be the best way to do it. That way, at least I'm kind of on record about something. Maybe this weekend, before week 2 fully gets underway, I'll sit there and give you my playoff and Super Bowl picks. But we'll see how that goes. Now, in terms of the NFL, week 1 of the 2015 season finally arrived, has come, and has gone. So I'm here to talk about the happenings, what was in week number 1 of this 2015 NFL season. And I'm just mainly going to talk about some of the major stories and then perhaps a few of the big stars of the week. First off, I think you got to go to Rex Ryan in his head coaching debut with the Buffalo Bills. They dominated Indianapolis in week number 1. There's no question about it. You watch that game and you sit there and look at the two teams and you would think Buffalo is the team that is the favorite to represent the AFC in Super Bowl 50 and not the Indianapolis Colts. That Buffalo Bills team believes in Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan has them playing at a high level from what it seemed like in week number 1. And this team will be a force to be reckoned with in the AFC East this year. There's no question about it. You got to look at the Seattle Seahawks going to St. Louis and once again losing there, this time in the opening game of the season in somewhat heartbreaking fashion in overtime. You know, is it just the fact that they don't have Cam Chancellor? That most certainly didn't help, especially on the defensive end. But there are bigger problems there. You lose James Carpenter in free agency and don't really effectively address the interior of that offensive line. It creates issues in pass protection and the run blocking as well. A team that is still trying to trot out there, even with Jimmy Graham at tight end and Marshawn Lynch at running back. You've got two beasts there. You're still trotting out there a bunch of undrafted players in Doug Baldwin and Jermaine Kearse on the outside. At some point in time, those chickens come home to roost. And the fact is, the Seattle Seahawks just don't have enough weapons that could really scare people and put major points on the board and make big-time explosive plays. For a Seattle team that, for a lot of intents and purposes, has reasonable expectations to be a contender to go back to the Super Bowl again for a third straight year, that opening loss in St. Louis most certainly doesn't help the cause, but a big boon to that St. Louis Rams organization, head coach Jeff Fisher, and new starting quarterback Nick Foles, along with that great St. Louis Rams defensive line. You go to the Cleveland and Jets game, and Josh McCown goes out early with a concussion. It's Johnny football time! I'm sorry, Browns fans. I'm sorry. We'll see if it's fully Johnny football time in week number 2. Oh, and what a joygasm for the media and fan bases that will be if he does actually start next week against Tennessee, especially him going against Mariota, and we'll get to that in a moment. One thing that should have really stood out this week is the fact that when you watch that Sunday afternoon game between the Ravens and the Broncos, there was a lot of thought and discussion about Peyton Manning and his arm strength and whether or not he should have retired, whether or not he did have one more year in him. The fact of the matter is, while the Broncos, yes, are adjusting to a new offense, a new system, a new philosophy, a new priority, a new approach to doing things, Peyton Manning looked terrible. Peyton Manning looked old. Peyton Manning looked noodle-armed, like to the point where even Chad Pennington says, "Dog, your arm is weak as shit." Peyton Manning looks done. And while the Denver Broncos were able to find a way to beat the Baltimore Ravens, it was largely based off of the fact that their defense played very, very well, and that's going to be a theme throughout the year. A team that's trying to run the ball in the Denver Broncos that didn't run the ball all that well in week number 1, with a quarterback who's off the mark, who lacks arm strength, and therefore allows defenses to collapse in. It could be a long year for the Denver Broncos, a tough year. It doesn't mean that they won't finish with a winning record or even make the playoffs or even win that division. But it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a fight. And you could see why there was maybe some thought that after 2014, not only did they need to fire John Fox, but secretly within the organization, they were hoping Peyton Manning was going to retire, because if he did play in 2015, it was going to create unrealistic expectations. And for those that thought that this Broncos team was going to be one of those elite teams in the AFC this year, based off of what you saw in week 1, it looks like that was a very unrealistic expectation. And then we've got to go to what to me was the featured Sunday afternoon matchup. Number 2 overall pick, Marcus Mariota and his Tennessee Titans going to Tampa Bay to take on number 1 overall pick, Jameis Winston and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And here's what I got to say about this. And you had to know this was coming. For all you Mariota haters, for all you Winston ass lickers and cocksuckers, after this game, tell me how my ass tastes. Eat shit! Those Buccaneers fans had to be sitting there and looking at it and saying, I thought Jameis was the more ready to play in the NFL. I thought he was the better pocket passer. Everything in that game pointed to Mariota being, man, the Titans dominated. What a hell of a debut from Mariota. Now, granted, he wasn't the greatest in the world. I think the media's getting just a little bit carried away. In part, I credit the game plan put in place, by Ken Wisenhunt and the offensive coordinator there in Tennessee. They put Mariota in really good positions to succeed. They had a good game plan. They followed through with it. I thought Mariota did a good job of taking what was given to him, not trying to force the issue, not taking any ridiculous gambles or big-time risks. On the flip side, I thought Tampa Bay's offensive game plan with Jameis Winston was very poor. It also doesn't help when the defense is getting blown up early and often throughout that game by the opposing offense. But not a good start for the Jameis Winston era in Tampa Bay. One game does not a season or a career make. And this is something we can look back on 3 years from now. If Jameis Winston is making Pro Bowls and Mariota is not a starter in the league anymore, we could say, remember that one time where Mariota actually played better than Winston? It was one time, and it's 1 week. And it's important not to overreact to it too much. I mean, granted, I'd be pumping up the volume a lot more on that, especially if Winston had outplayed Mariota, but that clearly was not the case. So for the moment, for 1 week, I'm going to take my glory and say, ha ha ha, motherfucker, I told you so. Eat shit, suck it. Mariota is going to be the better long-term quarterback in the NFL. Book it. Then you get to the Sunday night game, and I don't know what the hell was happening. Now, usually, I don't care much about that traditional Sunday night game once a year between the Giants and Cowboys. I know it's coming every year. I know the media loves to talk about the NFC East. Oh, God. To me, it's just boring football. And I will say the early part of that Giants-Cowboys game was kind of boring. It picked up as it went along and had an interesting finish. You've got Eli Manning with one of the biggest fucking mind-fuck, stupid brain farts that I've seen, well, since Super Bowl 49 when they didn't run Marshawn Lynch. Even though, to be fair, the Rams did run Marshawn Lynch on 4th and 1 in overtime against the Rams, and that went is what it is. But when you look at that game with the Giants, a Giants team that I don't think is going to be all that particularly good this year, they needed this win. They had the Cowboys on the ropes. They had a chance to put them away late in the game. That's an opportunity that you can't let slip through your fingers. That's an opportunity you have to be able to seize upon. And the New York Giants failed to do so. Eli Manning throwing the ball out of the back of the end zone on 3rd down with under 2 minutes to go with the Cowboys out of timeouts. That's a rookie mistake. You'd expect a Mariota or a Winston or another young quarterback to make that mistake. Not a 2-time Super Bowl champion that, by the way, just got paid to the tune of over $80 million in Eli Manning. An inexcusable mistake that just can't happen at that moment, especially with the quarterback that is as accomplished as Eli Manning is supposed to be. The Cowboys, though, do what good teams do. They find a way to win games that they should lose. Romo leads a late comeback drive. Touchdown pass to Jason Witten. Boom, the Cowboys have started off 1-0. The Giants are wondering what the hell just happened. And then, of course, the media is going all crazy about Tony Romo and all of his comebacks and how clutch of a performer he is. Of course, they fail to mention how so many times he has also failed in those clutch situations and all of that, especially later on in December and in the playoffs, so let's not get too carried away with it. And then we get to Monday night. What a couple, well, one game ended up being really good. That was the Eagles and the Falcons. The other one, that Vikings-49ers game, was terrible. The NFL has to figure out a better way on that opening night, that Monday night game, to sit there and give us a better second game. There has to be a better combination. You could have done something like the 49ers and the Cardinals. Those are two Western teams. It could come on at that same time slot. Every year it's been for years. You remember it was like Chargers versus Raiders or some game you knew was going to be shit. We thought maybe this Vikings 49ers game was going to be better, and it ultimately wasn't. And man, did the Vikings look bad. Their run defense was terrible, and Bridgewater looked scared, like he wasn't sure of himself, and that's a bad place to be. But then we get to that Philadelphia-Atlanta game, and even though the game was in Atlanta, most people, myself included, thought that Philadelphia was going to at least come out of the gate strong, at least want to make a statement in week number 1, and behind Chip Kelly and their new prize quarterback and Sam Bradford. Oh, fuck all that shit. The Eagles found a way to lose in week 1 to the Falcons, and now we have a lot of questions about them heading into their week 2 matchup with the Cowboys. You just look at the Eagles and you look at Sam Bradford, maybe he's a system fit, maybe he's not. They've got some different pieces on offense, but they didn't seem to really do much to try to get their first-round pick Aguilar involved in the game. They're throwing passes to Riley Cooper and Miles Austin, for God's sakes. They did a good job of getting Jordan Matthews involved, and they most certainly did a good job of deploying their 3 running backs in Murray, Matthews, and Darren Sproles. But the concern is, and you could clearly see this is a concern I had heading into the season with this Eagles team, DeMarco Murray came from a more traditional type of running system in Dallas from an NFL standpoint, whereas Chip Kelly's running more of a spread system. And from an NFL level, I had concerns about how DeMarco Murray is going to translate in a different type of system. And based off of what I saw in week 1 in that Monday night game, those concerns are legitimate. You know, it's one thing to bring in the big name, but the guy's got to be able to fit what you do. And granted, again, it's only 1 week. And 1 week does not a season make, and 1 week is not necessarily an indication of much of anything at all. But the simple fact of the matter is, for those of you that were ready to crown this the Eagles Dream Team 2.0, just be careful. It might start to look very soon like the Eagles Dream Team 1.0 from Andy Reid a couple of years ago. But a lot of interesting things happen. I think the biggest winners of the week have to be the Buffalo Bills with Rex Ryan. You're able to beat a quality team like the Indianapolis Colts in the dominant fashion that you did. Gives you a lot of momentum heading into that Week 2 home game against the New England Patriots. I think the St. Louis Rams have to be considered a big winner as well. To be able to beat the Seattle Seahawks, the defending divisional and conference champions, to be able to get that type of statement victory behind your new quarterback, Nick Foles, I think goes a long ways. And then you got to look at the Titans with Marcus Mariota. After 1 week of the season, they sure as hell look like geniuses for the fact that they drafted Mariota and the Buccaneers drafted Jameis Winston. I mean, so that's pretty much what happened in week 1 of the 2015 NFL season. The next video on this channel will be my picks for week number 2.